Hi, this is John from Raceback, and I'd like to compare the Talaria Sting to the Sur-Ron. Now, I'm not a dealer of Talarias and I'm not a dealer of Sur-Rons, but we've got a lot of experience with Sur-Ron. For the last 3 years, we've been developing Go Fast goodies, and this is one of our Raptors, which has a lot of our accessories on there, and that performs exceptionally well. So we know a fair bit about Sur-Rons. Now, there's a bit we don't know, or a lot of unknowns about the Talaria. So there's possibly some advantages and possibly some disadvantages. So we'll have a bit of a talk about that and open a discussion. So as far as specifications, they're fairly similar. They've had similar engineers design them, so the seat height, the ground clearance, top speed, wheelbase, etc. are very similar. Where it starts to get a little bit different, this bike is a bit heavier. It's around 5 kilos heavier according to the specs. Now, I've put them on scales and I've weighed front and rear and the balance seems okay. So 5 kilos is not the end of the earth. And that's probably because they've got a slightly bigger battery and a very beefy, robust frame through here. Other differences, we have a gearbox instead of the primary drive. So on the Sur-Ron we have a toothed belt versus this built-in gearbox. So talking about that quickly, now toothed belt is very efficient. A gearbox does have more drag, so it could actually reduce the power to the wheel slightly. We're not sure, but potentially that's the case. The other issue with this is that you can't change any gearing on the front. Obviously you can change it on the back, that's not a problem. As far as the gearbox goes, possibly that's an advantage, but it's untested at higher power levels. We're running around 12 kilowatts on the Sur-Rons. Now, we're not too sure if the gearbox will handle that level of power yet, as we haven't upgraded the performance on this yet. Other differences are tyres. They're using a wider tyre, which is an 80 by 119. The tyres are quite good. They're better than the standard Sur-Ron. Has a slightly wider rim. The swing arm is wider, but doesn't necessarily allow wider tyres. We've developed an SM Pro 18-inch kit for this. Now, the limiting factor is still the chain. The chain position's in the same. So the chain clearance with the wider tyres is very similar to the Sur-Ron. Having the wider swing arm doesn't make a lot of difference unless you were to heavily offset the wheel, which is probably not a good idea. A small offset's okay, but a large offset's not advisable. So a 90 by 118 fits in there nicely. One of the things that we found with this bike, when we got it, there were two issues that we really didn't like. One was the seating position. Now, it came with the RST forks over here standard, and what we'd noticed is that this large spacer was mounted on the bottom for the forks. So we've put D&Ms and moved this spacer to the front, or this ring, which is where we believe it should be. But from factory they'd mounted it down low, and it was really odd. Don't recommend you changing that, but because it is quite difficult. But that's quite a weird setup. Definitely works better with the D&Ms. The other issue we found when we first rode it, it had a camel's hump power curve. So what was happening, as soon as you'd accelerate, it would just burst power and then flatten off and be, really moderate afterwards. So it was really difficult to ride in the bush. What would happen is you just get this burst of acceleration and then it would just be dull. So if you're trying to do technical riding, that's really annoying, especially with brake cuts, because as soon as you hit the brake and let the brake out, it just bursts with power and try and wheel stand and brake traction. Not ideal. You want a linear power curve. So we contacted the importer and they said, okay, you probably have an older prototype. So we sent the controller away and they remapped it or brought the latest firmware, put the latest firmware onto it, and now the power is more linear, so that is better. As far as the seating position on this bike goes, I don't like it. Some people might like it, but it forces you to sit towards the front, which is very thin, and there's a very hard plastic base in there, and I find it digs into my spine. It's very narrow and firm underneath that. So I think the standard seating position on the Sur-Ron is better, but both of them need updating, in my opinion. That's why we've developed our sort of seats, longer MX seats, to allow you to get forward and back, etc. What else can we talk about? The battery. So the battery uses 2170 cells, which is a newer cell. That means it's a larger format cell than the Sur-Ron, which is an 18650. So this capacity is 38 ampere hour, Sur-Ron's 32, so that means it has a little bit more range in it. Now potentially the 2170 cells may have a better discharge rate as well, so that might be an advantage. I've opened the battery and had a look, and I'm really not going to say we're going to modify anything, but potentially this could be a better battery than the Sur-Ron. So overall, advantages, disadvantages. The ride positions on both the standard Sur-Ron and standard Talaria, in my opinion, are not good. You need to raise the bars, we need to change a few seats, we need to work on that, on the ergonomics of it. Performance, line for line, we've had runs on the standard Sur-Ron and the standard Talaria up long ranges, and the Talaria doesn't keep up with the Sur-Ron. Now I'm not too sure why, and that's why I did raise the issue about the gearbox. There may be extra drag on the gearbox, which means we're not getting as much power to the rear wheel. I'm not too sure. We're going to run some more tests and we'll work out the reason behind that. It might have been mapping, it could be some other issue. Other disadvantages, I think overall they're very similar. Potentially they can be both very good bikes, and as I said, they create a bit of competition with each other. So what that means is that, if you've got two bikes very similar, they're both going to try and improve each other as they go ahead. So we'll probably see some improvements to the Sur-Ron. They're probably going to lift their battery size soon, maybe increase their power, do a few things just to counter on this one. Likely that's going to happen soon, in my opinion. So overall, both good bikes. I think either way you go, if you get an e-bike, you're going to be able to ride in more places. There's definitely advantages. You will need to improve them a bit, and we've started on some goodies. We've already got CNC foot pegs and brace kits. We've got the SM Pro 21 and 18 inch wheels online. We're developing a new bash plate. This bash plate is flimsy. We've already taken a few hits, and I dare say we need to get something out pretty quickly if you're a serious off-road rider. Very easily damage your bottom end there. We're trying to work on some longer rear guards and seats as well, and just get the ergonomics right on the front. So overall, pretty good bike. We've done a few miles on it so far. We're going to put a few more miles, do a few videos. What else can I say? Personally, I don't like how fat it is through the middle. I like to grip with my knees, but I'm finding it quite wide. But I've had other riders say, oh, they like it wider. It's more like a traditional motorbike. So these are just personal things, I suppose. I don't think you can go wrong with either of the bikes. Just enjoy your riding and have fun, and hopefully we can bring you some more videos and try and get the best out of these bikes, these Talarias as well as the Sur-Rons. So thanks for your time. Leave any comments or suggestions, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can.